The big question going into this review was simple: can the Galaxy A57 finally deliver something close to flagship level performance in a mid-range Galaxy phone? That was the same question people had with the Galaxy A56, which was already Samsung's most polished mid-range phone at the time. So, does the Galaxy A57 answer that questions with a yes, a no, or something in between? And just as important, are the rest of the phone's features strong enough to justify the highest price Samsung has ever asked for one of its main mid-range models? Let's find out. The first thing you notice when you hold the Galaxy A57 is how light it feels. Samsung has somehow managed to cut almost 20 grams compared with the Galaxy A56, making this the lightest model in the A series lineup since the Galaxy A52, A53, A54 and A56 all came in between 189 and 200 grams, while the Galaxy A55 was a much heavier 213 grams, the A57 just 179 grams. Samsung also made the phone thinner. The A56 was already 0.8mm thinner than the A55, and now the A57 trims off another 0.5mm. Slimming down its phones has clearly been one of Samsung's main design goals over the past couple of years, and to its credit, the company keeps doing it well. That lighter, thinner body makes the A57 a pleasure to use. It feels easy in the hand and still has that premium feel thanks to the glass and metal build. But there is one design choice that really hurts the look: the Samsung rings on the back. As one of my colleagues pointed out, they look like they were taken straight from a much cheaper phone. They just do not fit on a device that starts over €500. The A56 handled this better, with the camera rings sitting more neatly inside the camera island. Samsung really should have kept that approach instead of moving to something that looks like a downgrade. The rest of the rear design is still very nice, helped by the reflective Gorilla Glass Victus Plus finish. Still, most people will use a case, so the camera ring issue may not matter much day to day. What matters more is durability, and here the A57 makes a real improvement. It now comes with IP68 water and dust resistance. That is better than IP67, meaning the phone can survive up to 1.5 meters of water for 30 minutes instead of just 1 meter. On the display side, the Galaxy A57 does not bring a major upgrade over the Galaxy A56, but that is not really a bad thing because the screen was already good. You get a bright, colorful AMOLED panel with a 120Hz refresh rate, and it is pleasant for everything from watching videos to scrolling through apps and browsing the web. It is the kind of screen that works well in normal use without drawing attention to itself, which is often a sign of a good display. The good news is that Samsung has finally reduced the ugly bezels that have bothered this series for a while. They are slimmer on all sides now, and while the bottom chin is still the thickest part, it is still a welcome improvement. This makes the phone look more modern and far more refined than before. The stereo speakers also carry over from the Galaxy A56. They sound decent for a mid-range device, but they are not especially loud, and the bass is still a little weak. Good enough for casual use, but not the best if you listen to a lot of music or watch a lot of content without headphones. The Galaxy A57 uses the same rear camera setup as the A56. That means a 50MP main camera, a 12MP ultra-wide camera, and a 5MP macro camera. Because the hardware is unchanged, the results are mostly the same too. In daylight, the A57 takes excellent photos with strong dynamic range and accurate colors. It does a very good job of keeping the scene balanced without making the image look fake or overly processed. Low light performance is also solid, especially when night mode kicks in automatically. The phone handles darker scenes well enough for a mid-range model, and the main camera is still the strongest part of the setup. The ultra-wide camera continues to be usable in bright conditions, but image quality drops once the light gets worse. That is still pretty normal in this segment, but it would have been nice to see a little more consistency. The macro camera is still the weakest part of the camera system. It is fun to try once or twice, but for most people it will just sit there unused. At this price, a macro lens feels less useful than a proper zoom camera would, and that is still missing here, which is disappointing. Some rivals in this segment do offer zoom, and Samsung still seems to be holding back to avoid stepping on the Galaxy S FE series. One area where the Galaxy A57 does improve is speed. Samsung already made major progress with the A56 by cutting shutter lag and improving lens switching, and that same fast, responsive feeling continues here. The camera app feels quick, smooth, and far better than older mid-range Galaxy phones. The front camera is unchanged too, with a 12-megapixel sensor, and it keeps doing a great job. Selfies come out sharp with good detail and a strong dynamic range, both outdoors and indoors. Video recording is also mostly the same. You still get 4K at 30 FPS and there is no HDR video recording support. Samsung talks about richer dynamic range and advanced sensor HDR, but that sounds more like marketing than a major real-world change. Video quality is fine and usable, but it is not a standout feature. With the Galaxy A56, Samsung made a real leap toward making a mid-range Galaxy phone feel smooth in everyday use. Animations were surprisingly fluid, and the phone finally felt closer to a premium device than most previous A-series phones. It was not perfect though. There was enough stutter now and then to remind you that, with Samsung, truly consistent smoothness usually meant spending much more. The Galaxy A57 takes another step forward, whether that is because of Exynos 1680, better software tuning, or both. Samsung has clearly pushed performance even closer to its flagship phones. Is the lag completely gone? Not quite. If you swipe down from the right side to open Quick Panel directly, you may still notice a small delay in the animation. And if navigation is running in the background, the phone can occasionally take a moment to respond. Those moments are still here. But the important thing is that they are rare. In everyday use, the A57 often feels like a much more expensive phone than it is. That is a big win for Samsung, especially in a category where smooth performance has not always been a strength. Gaming is also solid. Samsung says the Exynos 1680 delivers up to 15% better GPU performance than the A56's chip, but in real life the difference is not dramatic. This is still a mid-range phone, so it is not going to match a Galaxy S25 or S26 in the heaviest games at the highest settings. Those phones can push much higher frame rates, while the A57 will often sit just under 60 FPS in tougher titles. Still, if you use default graphics settings, the A57 handles popular games like Call of Duty and Asphalt Legends very well. For most people, that is more than enough. Cooling is a bit more complicated. Samsung says the Galaxy A57 has a vapor chamber that is 13% larger than the one in the A56, which should help with heat, but the thinner body likely offsets some of that benefit. Under heavy gaming or long video recording sessions, the phone can heat up faster than the A56. Even so, overall thermals are still fine. It does not become uncomfortable to hold in normal use, and it generally stays under control. That matters because Samsung has packed a more powerful GPU into a thinner body, and it could have been worse. The Galaxy A57 is Samsung's best mid-range phone so far, and if you are shopping in this price class, it is an easy phone to recommend. The bigger question is whether it is the smartest one to buy. At over $500, the Galaxy S25 FE has to be part of the conversation. For around $100 more, it gives you more complete flagship hardware, and in many markets, discounts make that gap even smaller. That makes the choice harder to ignore. If the S25 FE is within your budget, it is probably the better long-term buy. But if you want to stay in the mid-range space, or you are willing to wait for the Galaxy A57 to drop in price, this is the strongest answer Samsung has ever made for this category.